from paperbeadrollers.com, and I'm here at the beach because today our tutorial is how to make this beachy bracelet from paper, beads, and leather. So let's get started. This beachy bracelet is made from paper beads and braided leather cord you can purchase from the shop at paperbeadrollers.com. It's an easy project to make, even for a beginner. The soothing greens and blues are perfect complements for the hues of the sea. Here are the tools and supplies you'll need for this project. 6 paper beads that are shaped to act as spacer bars. 3 decorative paper beads to be the focal points of the bracelet. A clasp that is sized to fit the leather you're using. This is the magnetic knot clasp. And 3 pieces of leather cord. I'm using the mint and blue 4mm braided leather cord. You can purchase the cord and the clasp in the shop at paperbeadrollers.com. I used 2 sizes of paper bead rollers for this project. I used the peach 1/4 inch and the pink 3/8 inch sizes from paperbeadrollers.com. You'll also need scissors, white glue, a hardening glaze such as diamond glaze, and a brush, skewers, and a foam block, some very strong glue such as E6000. The strips for these paper beads are 11 inches long. For the focal beads, the width is 1/2 inch. For the spacer bar beads, the width is 1/4 inch. For the spacer bars in the middle focal bead, I chose a mint green 65-pound cardstock and painted it with a teal craft paint that was a close match to the blue leather cord. This is the Craft Smart neon blue that I happen to have on hand. I brushed it on so that you could see the green paper through the brush strokes. For the striped focal bead, I used a pre-printed scrapbook paper. These green water-like drops were already printed on the page. They're raised and they have a little bit of glitter in them. Now on the other side of the paper, which was just plain white, I brushed on the neon blue paint, which created the striped look in the final bead. To roll the focal point beads, I used the peach paper bead roller. Slide the wide end of the paper into the slot. And then just roll the strip, centering each layer on top of the other. And when you get to the last inch or so, add the white school glue and tack down the end. For the spacer bar beads, I used the pink paper bead roller. This is the largest roller we carry right now. This time, I'm going to align the strip to one edge as I roll, creating that fluted look. And I'll just tack down that end. Now once these dry and before I glaze them, I'm going to shape them. I'll go ahead and fit them around the leather strips to make sure I get the sizing right. And just gently press down. Now be careful because if you press too hard in the wrong place, you may crease the bead. You just want it to have a curve so that it becomes an oval. If you've watched my other videos, you may notice that this is quite different from my normal routine. I want to be sure that the paper doesn't change shape while I'm glazing because once the glaze hardens, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to reshape the beads. So I stuck 2 skewers into my foam block at the width I needed. Now in order to keep the skewers spaced correctly to hold the beads tightly, I needed to put little beads in between the skewers to hold them open along the length. So that keeps everything tight and in place while I'm glazing. Now I can glaze the outside of these beads. If you're going to use this technique in a jewelry design where there will be open space inside the spacer beads, you might want to dip these in PC petrifier before glazing to make them even harder. Now in this case, the spacer beads will be supported by the 3 strips of leather, so it's not really necessary to do that. They're not going to need to hold up entirely on their own because if they get pressed down, they'll be pressed into the leather cord, which will hold them open and keep them in shape. Still, I'll do at least 3 coats on the outside of these beads and 2 coats on the inside of these beads to give them some good strength. To glaze the insides, I just pull them straight off the skewers and just literally glaze them while holding them in my fingers, just leaving them here on my vinyl mat to dry. The focal point beads get glazed as normal. I just brush on 2 coats of diamond glaze. Now I don't normally glaze the inside of beads like these unless I expect them to be exposed to water, but you certainly can if you're selling the beads or you just want a bit of extra hardening. Now let's put it all together. My leather cords ended up being about 6 inches long. Now I don't have the smallest wrists and I like my bracelets a bit loose. Remember to take the size of your clasp into account when deciding where to cut your cords. I'm using 2 blues on the outsides with the mint green in the middle. I'll slide a spacer onto all 3 cords. Then slide a focal bead onto the mint green cord. Now I'll slide a spacer onto the other side. Now you can decide exactly how you want the focal beads to sit. They can be pushed down even with the cord, or if you push the spacers in closer, they can kind of sit up higher above the cord. I'll add the next focal bead and the end spacer. Now pay attention to how your spacers are oriented. I chose to put the wider ends of the center spacers to the middle and the wider ends of the end spacers to the outside. Now the last focal bead and spacer bar. Now these really fit pretty tightly, so I've decided not to glue them into place right now. If I see that they move around a lot as I wear the bracelet, I probably will come back and add glue to these spacers to glue them in place on the leather. Now let's add the clasp. This is where sizing becomes important. You'll need to see where the clasp should hit on your wrist. I'm going to put my last 2 spacers and kind of eyeball where I'm going to need this clasp to go. Now remember, the clasp takes up a lot of space, so you can't just cut the cords to the length you need for your wrist. It looks like I need the cords on either side of my decorative beads to be about 1¼ inch long. So I'll go ahead and cut my blue cords with a sharp pair of scissors. The fussy scissors work really well for this, but regular scissors will also work. Now note, I'm only cutting the blue cords. I need the mint green cord to be a little bit longer because that's what the clasp is going to go on. The ends of the blue cords will be hidden under my spacer bead, but the mint cord has to be longer for the clasp. And use my E6000 glue to glue the spacer bead into place. Now hopefully you haven't found out the hard way, but if you squeeze a tube of E6000, it does not stop coming out because of the metal tube. So I always stick a toothpick into the tube and use that to apply the glue to my project. Now I can see how much of the green cord to trim so that my clasp is going to fall right up against the spacer. There we go. Now I can apply my glue and glue this clasp onto the green cord. Just finish off the other side the exact same way and let the glue set up fully before wearing the bracelet. Now don't forget this tip, which I learned from one of my channel subscribers. Apply some Vaseline to the spout of the E6000 tube before you put the cap back on. That will ensure that your tube doesn't become glued shut. I hope you have fun creating your own Beachy bracelet. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and join us over on Facebook in the Paper Bead Fanatics group so I can see pics of what you make. I'll see you next time.